My parents called me too fat to find love, spread rumors. I was a mail-order bride who got rejected. I never fought back. But when I married the most honored man in our city, they couldn't even face me. Hey, Reddit. I was born into a family where appearance meant everything. My mother had once been a pageant queen, and my father lived vicariously through that legacy, always quick to tell us that image opened doors, even if it slammed shut the parts of yourself you actually needed to live a decent life, like self-worth, compassion, or love. From a young age, I was always the one who didn't fit the mold. My older sister, Amber, looked like a walking ad for a hair care commercial, tall, toned, and confident. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the chubby kid who liked books and baking, who was always told not to wear stripes or sit in the front for pictures. By the time I was in high school, I had learned to shrink myself in every way that didn't involve food, not just physically, but emotionally. If I cried, I was told I was too sensitive. If I fought back, I was told I was delusional. When boys didn't ask me out to prom, my mother casually said one day at dinner that maybe if I dropped 30 pounds and stopped dressing like a librarian, someone might actually notice me. I remember that night like it was burned into my bones. I had cooked dinner, lasagna, garlic bread, and a salad. Everyone ate. No one said thank you. And then as they cleared their plates, my dad turned to me and said with a chuckle that maybe I should stop making food if I want to look like I ate all of it. My sister laughed. My mom didn't even look up. When I turned 23, I left home quietly. No big drama, just a note saying I was going to live with a friend in another city. I moved into a tiny apartment, worked 2 jobs, and finally started doing things for myself. I took walks, I started therapy, I met people who liked me not in spite of how I looked, but because I was kind, smart, and funny. That was the year I met Marcus. He came into the bakery I worked at on Thursdays and always ordered the same thing: almond croissant, black coffee, no sugar. He wasn't flashy, just warm. The kind of man who remembered your name and actually meant it when he asked how you were. He worked for the city organizing events and community initiatives, and everyone who knew him said the same thing. He made people feel seen. For the first time in my life, someone saw me. We didn't fall into romance right away. We talked often about books or weekend plans. He'd ask about my dreams and I'd laugh awkwardly, not knowing how to answer, because I had never really been allowed to have any. Then one day I brought him a cinnamon bun instead of his croissant, saying I had run out. He grinned and said he liked cinnamon more anyway. That night he asked if I wanted to go to the outdoor movie in the park with him. We never looked back. Marcus was everything my family said didn't exist. Someone who loved me, not for what I looked like, but who I was. And yes, I had lost some weight by then. But more than that, I had started carrying myself differently, with purpose, with pride, with a quiet kind of confidence that comes from surviving people who made you believe you didn't matter. But the peace didn't last long. Word reached my family somehow, maybe through social media or someone who saw me and Marcus together at an event. I started getting messages. At first it was my mom saying she heard I was living with some man and hoped I wasn't embarrassing myself. Then came the real blow. My cousin texted me asking if it was true that I had been part of some weird dating site and got dumped by a man from another country. Confused, I asked what she meant, and she sent me a screenshot of a family group chat I wasn't part of. It was my mom. She told everyone I had signed up for a mail-order bride service, that I had flown overseas only to be rejected and sent home. The lie was bizarre and cruel. When I confronted her over the phone, all she said was that she was trying to explain my absence in a way that wouldn't shame the family. I laughed bitterly. I had been gone for nearly 6 years, and suddenly now I was a problem to be explained? Marcus was furious. He asked if I wanted to address it, go public, or confront them. I said no. I didn't want to give them that power. Not yet. I hadn't spoken to my parents or sisters since the lie had spread. I was grieving them like they were dead, even though they were very much alive and just as cruel. Instead, I focused on the life I was building. I started my own small business, a catering company for private events, and Marcus was my biggest supporter. We grew both professionally and personally. He proposed to me 2 years later on the same park bench where we had our first movie night. That's when everything changed. The wedding was a big deal, not in a flashy sense, but because Marcus was deeply respected. He had become head of the community outreach department and was known for transforming struggling neighborhoods through honest work and kindness. The guest list included local politicians, business owners, and media. It was the kind of wedding people noticed, which meant, of course, that my family did too. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a letter. Not an email, a real letter. It was from my mother. In it, she said she was happy I had finally made something of myself and that she hoped there were no hard feelings. She didn't apologize. Not once. She just said she and Amber would love to attend if there was still room and that it would mean a lot to have the whole family there to show their support. Support. That word felt like acid in my mouth. I showed the letter to Marcus, who just raised an eyebrow, and asked what I wanted to do. I said I needed to think. I did think. Long and hard. I remembered every birthday they ignored, every time they mocked me at dinner, every lie they told to protect their image. I thought about the little girl who cried in the mirror, wondering why she wasn't enough. I thought about the woman I had become, the one who built a life without them. And then I made a choice. I didn't respond. I didn't invite them. And when the wedding day came, beautiful, elegant, filled with music and laughter, and 100 people who loved me, they weren't there, but someone else was. A figure standing at the edge of the ceremony, watching but not stepping in. It was my sister, Amber. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just stood there like a ghost from another life, waiting for what I didn't know, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. Amber, standing there at the edge of my wedding, like some ghost from the life I buried, nearly broke the spell of the day. The sun was golden, laughter surrounded us. Marcus was beaming beside me, and yet my heart clenched with the weight of her silent presence. She didn't make a scene. She didn't approach. She just stood distant, just far enough to be noticed but not involved. After the ceremony, as guests moved toward the reception area, I watched her turn and walk away without a word. For a second, I considered chasing after her. I wanted to know what she wanted, why she came, what she thought she'd achieve by just standing there like that. But Marcus slipped his hand into mine and looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And suddenly I didn't care. That was the moment I realized I didn't owe them anything anymore. Not my time, not my energy, not even my anger. That night, as the party died down and we snuck away from the crowd for a breath of air, Marcus kissed my forehead and said quietly, "She'll come back." They always do when they realize you've built something without them. He wasn't wrong. 3 days later, I got a message, this time from my father. Short, dry. "We saw photos. You looked different. Hope all is well. Let us know if you're ever open to talking. Not congratulations, not an apology. Just vague sentiment coded in arrogance, like I should be honored." They acknowledged my existence. I didn't respond. A week after that, it got worse. One of Marcus's colleagues mentioned that his mother, who worked with a charity in the same circles as my mother, had heard some things. That I had tricked Marcus into marrying me. That I'd used weight loss surgery, heavy filters, and even blackmail. The story was ridiculous, but it came from my family. I wanted to scream, to show up at their doorstep and ask why they couldn't just let me be. Why they felt the need to keep trying to ruin me even after I was gone. Instead, I invited my therapist over for coffee. I told her everything. The years of belittling, the lies, the silence, the shame. She listened, nodded, and then asked me the one question no one ever had. Why do you still think you need to prove anything to people who never cared about your truth? That question sat with me for days. I had built a business, a marriage, a life that was completely mine, yet a part of me still burned every time I thought of them. I realized I was still trapped by their narrative. I hadn't truly broken free. I had just moved far enough away to pretend it didn't touch me, but it did. So I decided to end it once and for all. I wrote a letter. Not a cruel one, not even angry, just the truth. I told them I knew about the rumors. I knew about the lies. I told them how it felt growing up in a house where I was the punchline, where I had to earn love that was never given. I reminded them of every moment they humiliated me and how none of it stopped me from becoming someone. I told them they were not welcome in my life unless they acknowledged what they did. And then I said something I never thought I'd be strong enough to say. I am not ashamed of who I was. Not the fat girl, not the quiet girl, not the girl who cried after dinner. You were ashamed of me, but now I understand that shame was always yours. I never mailed the letter. I posted it on my social media. I didn't tag them. I didn't call them out by name. But the message was loud and clear. It went viral in my circles. Friends, clients, even strangers messaged me saying they saw themselves in those words, that they cried reading it, that they finally felt like someone understood what it meant to carry that kind of wound. And my family? They stayed silent. No more messages, no more letters. They vanished, just like they always do when confronted with the truth. Except this time, I wasn't a scared little girl hoping they'd come around. I was a woman who had survived them and come out shining. Marcus told me he had never been prouder of me, and I believed him. Because for the first time in my life, I was proud of myself. Not just for surviving, but for thriving. For choosing to break the cycle. For standing up not with fists or fury, but with truth. Months passed. The wedding buzz faded, and our lives found rhythm again. My business took off, and Marcus and I started volunteering at a youth program for girls dealing with body image trauma. I used to avoid talking about my past, but now I told my story openly, not to shame my family, but to reclaim it. One day after a long session with a group of teenage girls, one of them hugged me and whispered, "You make me believe I don't have to hate myself forever." That's when I knew everything I went through had a purpose, that even the deepest pain can be transformed into power. And my family, they still exist somewhere. I hear about them sometimes, a charity gala here, a church event there. I'm sure they still tell their stories, spinning their version of the past. But I no longer live in that story. I wrote my own. And in mine, the girl they tried to break grew up, stood tall, and learned that love, real love, starts with loving yourself enough to walk away from anything that teaches you you're not enough. That's the story I'll pass on. That's the legacy I'll leave. And that's the part they'll never get to rewrite.